Hello, welcome. My name is Emiko Ono. I'm the director of the Performing Arts Program at the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Thank you for joining us today. It is a pleasure to be here. In 2017, the Hewlett Foundation celebrated its 50th anniversary by launching the Hewlett 50 Arts Commissions. This was an appropriate gesture because of the strong commitment of our founders, Bill and Flora Hewlett. They have always had a strong commitment to the arts. It's been a part of the Hewlett Foundation's DNA from its inception, and in fact, 2 of the first 7 grants the foundation made back in 1967 were to arts organizations. And while that form of support for the arts has changed over the years, and it continues to evolve, our commitment to the performing arts in the Bay Area has been absolutely unwavering. The Hewlett 50 Arts Commissions that we'll be talking about today is just one of the ways that we're ensuring our performing arts grant making continues to evolve and meets the needs of audiences and communities across the Bay Area. In this case, by supporting the creation and premiere of exceptional works of performance. Today, we'll be giving an overview of this round of the Hewlett 50 Arts Commissions initiative, offering insights into the eligibility requirements, application process, and providing a space for you to ask questions about the awards. Over the last 2 years, we've awarded the first 20 of the 50 Hewlett 50 commissions, first in music composition, and last year in theater, spoken word, and musical theater. If you haven't already, I encourage you to look through the projects we selected in those first 2 rounds. Those are available on our website. And you'll see a very high level of artistry and imagination in each of them. You'll see that each of them has themes that resonate with communities around the Bay Area. And if you look at them carefully, you'll also see what we're looking for. We're looking for bold, inspiring works that speak to our time and will hopefully go on to engage audiences for many years to come. So thanks again for taking the time to join us today. And with this, I'll turn it over to Jaime Cortez, Performing Arts Program Officer, who can tell you more about the initiative.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's so good to be here. I see some familiar faces out here. I know of some of the work that some of you have done out in this audience, and it makes me feel already excited about what might come in from the application process. My name is Jaime Cortez, and I'm a program officer in the Performing Arts Department program at the Hewlett Foundation. And I'm going to be here talking to you a little bit about this process that we have for the 50 commissions. I'd like to make a request, and that is if you could please hold your questions until after the presentations. And I ask that because we have a ton of pretty detailed information that we need to make sure we get out to you, and then we're going to have plenty of time left over to discuss questions, and then there'll be ways of asking questions afterwards, after this is over as well. So if you could please hold your questions, we'll be happy to take them at the end. For those of you who are watching this on Facebook Live, please go ahead and feel free to ask your questions via the comments. We have a staff member who is monitoring the questions, and will respond to some of those during the question and answer period as well. This workshop is going to be recorded, and we're going to be posting this video with closed caption on the FAQ page of our website in a week or 2, we hope. So as Emiko said, the Hewlett Foundation, we've been supporting the arts in the San Francisco Bay Area for 50 years. Today, we provide grants to nearly 250 organizations, and we award approximately $20 million in annual funding. We give a lot of multi-year general operating support to our grantees. That's really how we like to operate, and we like the idea that grantees can kind of chart their own course with those resources. I want to give you a little overview of the 50 Commissions program. We are really excited about the Hewlett 50 Commissions program. It is something that we think of as a complement to our grant making, but it is different from our day-to-day grant making as well. We are, we're providing support for Bay Area nonprofit organizations to work with world-class artists to develop and premiere new works of exceptional quality and hopefully of enduring value as well. The goals of this commission is to ensure that the Bay Area remains a thriving center for artistic expression and that artists continue to have access to inspiring world-class art. We want to commission the best artists locally, nationally, and hopefully internationally as well, depending on what kind of applications come in. So over 5 years, through this initiative, the Hewlett Foundation is going to be awarding 50 awards of $150,000 each, totaling $7.5 million of money to support the creation and presentation of these works by outstanding artists. The grants will be awarded to nonprofit organizations based in the 11-county San Francisco Bay Area, which we'll show you in a moment on a map. And that is to create new work in the performing arts. Something that's important to note is that the applicants, the lead applicant, does not have to have the arts as a primary organizational mission. It can be a non-arts organization, and I'll give you a kind of example of that from last year. Last year, we awarded a theater commission, a spoken word / theater commission to PolicyLink. PolicyLink is an organization that does research and policy work around issues of poverty and social justice. And this commission was for them to work with the lead artist, Michael Quest Moore, a poet from New Orleans, and that he was going to be leading a team of poets who were going to be interviewing people all over the country and in the end create a big performative choreo poem, as they call it, focused on the 100 million Americans who are living at or near the poverty line. So this is not an arts organization, but they had a really compelling project that really fit in beautifully with their mission, and our panelists were sold on it, and we were as well. So that's an example of there's a kind of an openness about who can apply. Of course, most of the applicants and probably most of the awardees will be arts organizations, but not exclusively. Another thing that we require is that the new works must have a world premiere in the 11 Bay Area counties that we're going to outline within 3 years of receiving the grant. So that would be by July of 2023. We expect to see that world premiere happen. So 3 years is, hopefully plenty of time to pull together the production. We know that sometimes the shows take a bit longer. Maybe you thought it would happen in 2 years, but if it delays a few months, it's fine as long as you get into that 3-year mark. So if you thought you could do it in a year, but it really takes 2 years, that's cool. We'll just be in touch about that. But we ask you to stay within that 3 years. We have already awarded the first 20 awards, and in this round we'll be doing 10 more. So in this round, which is now the 3rd year of this initiative, or the 3rd cycle, we're going to be focused on the disciplines of dance and movement-based performance. Movement-based performance is something that has a rather shaggy definition, and that is, kind of by design, we wanted to have a little bit of give to it. And the way that we're thinking of movement-based performance is that it is a performance that gives primacy to the moving body as the primary mode of expression, as opposed to text, spoken word, music, audiovisual, or other elements of the performance. Just for your information as well, next year, the focus is going to be on folk and traditional arts. So there might be some people who apply in this round and do not get a commission, but who might be eligible under this category to apply again next year. So if you come back next year, you'll be that much better at the application process in the traditional arts round. In the year after that, the final round of these commissions will be focused on film and media arts. This is the kind of the geography of eligibility. There's these 11 Bay Area counties that we have here. They're listed up there: Alameda, Contra Costa, Marin, Monterey, Napa, San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, Solano, and Sonoma. So the lead applicant must be based in one of those 11 counties. That lead applicant must also be a 501c3 public charity. And then we know that, artists rarely create work in a vacuum. There's often a lot of collaboration that happens. And in these projects, multiple organizations and artists may be involved. and in some cases, they may play significant roles in helping to bring the project to life. However, in all cases, your application has to name a single lead applicant and a single lead artist. So if you, for instance, are working, if the application is for a collective of people who do dance together, even though they might be co-equal within the organization and all have a creative artistic voice within the organization, the application needs to hold one of them forth as the lead artist. I want to talk a little bit about the lead applicant. So the lead applicant has certain key responsibilities. They are the organization that's going to submit the application. They are going to be the ones to sign the grant agreement if they are awarded a commission. They are responsible for commissioning the lead artist and managing the project to fruition. We have some budget requirements as well for applicants. The lead applicant must have an annual income of $100,000 or more each year for the past 3 fiscal years. We also require that an organization submit only one application per round. A lead applicant can only submit one per round. Likewise, if you're a lead artist, you can only be a lead artist on one application per round. The one exception to this is fiscal sponsors. If you're a fiscal sponsor and you meet the eligibility criteria that we just described, budget size, location, etc., if you meet that eligibility, you can be a lead applicant for both your own project and for fiscally sponsored projects. And you can submit for multiple fiscally sponsored projects. For instance, last year, Intersection for the Arts, which is a fiscal sponsor, they submitted more than one applications for projects that they were fiscally sponsoring. The one requirement with the fiscally sponsored projects is that those two should have an annual income of $100,000 or more for the past 3 fiscal years. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the lead artist. The lead artist can be based in the Bay Area, they can be national, they can be international. We expect that the lead artist will be, in most cases for this round, they will be choreographers or movement-based performers. If this is not the case with the lead artist, it's probably a good idea to check in with us to make sure that it's going to be a good fit. We don't want you to spend your time and energy on an application if the lead artist is not appropriate for this opportunity. We require that the lead artist have presented a minimum of 2 full-length original works that they created or co-created in the past 3 years. If the lead artist is someone who already has an established relationship with the organization that is applying, for instance, if they're the artistic director or if they're the recurring choreographer, then in that case, the organization that's applying should really try to describe how this work is going to go above and beyond business as usual for the organization. And by that, we mean, for instance, I'm Jaime Cortez. If I have the Jaime Cortez Dance Company, and the Jaime Cortez Dance Company applies, then that application should really tell the story of how this is not business as usual for the organization. It should tell the story of how this grant will open up new possibilities about how this artist works, what kind of ambition they're taking on, what kind of collaboration, just something that shows that you're responding to the opportunity. Okay. And the final thing we'll add about the lead artists is that student artists are not eligible to serve as lead artists for these awards, and also projects that involve students as the primary performers are not eligible for the commission. Okay, we want to talk a little bit about money and how we're budgeting things out. This is a commissioning grant, and so our real focus is on supporting the creation. We want to put a lot of our resources into that. And so part of that is that we require that $50,000 minimum be paid to the lead artist in artist fees. So that's 1/3 of the grant has to go to your lead artist. And then we want for you to give from this grant at least $50,000 more for other creation expenses. And then the final piece of that kind of budget puzzle is that we will you can spend up to $50,000 in creation expenses. That could include venue rental, marketing, staff time, tech support, administrative overhead, all of that. That amount can be up to $50,000, and it can be as small as you want it to be as well. If you really want to spend a lot of this on the the creation fees, you can spend all of it if you want on that. There's no maximum for that, but there is a maximum for those presentation expenses. Something to note is that we are anticipating funding both projects that will use the Hewlett money to pay for the entire project and projects that will be raising additional funds to make their project happen. We do not require that you go out and raise more money for your project. We do not require matching of any kind. So if your project can be done entirely with this commission, beautiful. If yours is bigger and you need to do more fundraising, great. We'll just ask you to tell us the story of what is going to be the additional fundraising that you're doing and how do you think you're going to get that extra money. Okay. So as we mentioned, we want to see your world premiere by June 30th, 2023. You got 3 years to make it happen. We are also focused on new works. It is a commission. And so the projects must be one of two things. They should be entirely new works, or they can be a reimagining or adaptation of an existing work with significant creative alterations by the lead artist. I'll give you one example as well from last year. Cal Shakespeare received a commission to work with the playwright Marcus Gardley. And he's going to be doing a play based on Shakespeare's The Tempest. It's not a straight-up presentation of The Tempest. The Tempest just served as one of the inspirations for this story. It's going to be set in the Bay Area during World War II, in the Richmond shipyards, and it's going to be focused on the African-American women who worked in those shipyards. That's how he was playing with a pre-existing text. If he was just saying, I want to do an all African-American production of The Tempest, that wouldn't have been eligible. But because he was significantly riffing off of it and bringing his own creative perspective, it was exciting, and that got funded. Another thing to note is that if the project has already received funding from the Gerbode Foundation, Special Award for the Arts, or the Creative Work Fund, that project is not eligible for this. Let's see. Similarly, if a lead applicant has already, as an organization, received one of these commissions, they are not eligible to come back and apply for another one. If a lead artist has already received one of these commissions as a lead artist, they are not eligible. So it's kind of a one and done. Once you're awarded, we want you to not come back. Okay, and now we're going to have a kind of go into more detail about the online application, which is, of course, where you'll be spending a lot of time and energy on this, and we'll have our very able application maven, Kevin Seaman, who's our consultant, talk to you in detail about that.
Thanks, Jaime. Hi, my name is Kevin Seaman. I'm the project manager for this year's Hewlett 50 Arts Commissions Awards, and I'm really excited to be the person on the other side of that, the 50C help at hewlett.org. When you have a question, I'll be the person that's answering that, just to put a name and a face with that email address. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit first about the application process, what things look like from start to finish, and what you can expect. Unlike the last 2 cycles of this grant, this year we're going to have a one-step application process with an online application that's hosted by SurveyMonkey Apply. Applications must be submitted by 5 p.m. Pacific Time on Wednesday, November 13th, 2019. It's 5 o'clock. We'll assemble a panel of experts in dance and movement-based performance to review the applications who will remain anonymous during the selection process. This expert panel will carefully review the applications and select the 20 most competitive applications to become finalists. Finalist applications will then be reviewed by the Hewlett Foundation staff using the selection criteria, which we'll describe in a moment. The 10 grant recipients will be notified in April 2020, with a public announcement in June 2020. To apply for an award, the lead applicant will first need to register with an account for SurveyMonkey Apply. Once the account has been created, the applicant will complete and submit the online application form. The link to this form is found on the Hewlett Foundation website. There's also a lot of information about the Hewlett 50 Arts Commissions and the guidelines and the FAQ and throughout the website. So we really encourage you to look at those resources before you start your application. Before accessing the full proposal, applicants must complete and submit a short form consisting of 13 yes or no questions to ensure that they meet all eligibility requirements. These questions are available for you in the printed application, and for those of you watching on Facebook Live, I'll follow up by sending this paper application out to you with the full application form, including the eligibility questions. After submitting the eligibility form, applicants will have access to the full proposal consisting of 9 tasks to be completed by applicants. This application does not need to be completed in one sitting, and SurveyMonkey will automatically save your progress in the application. You can also hit save as often as you like. The tasks can be completed in any order, and they include EIN verification, where you put your EIN number in, and basic contact information for the organization and the artist. Overarching project information, like a project description, as well as a detailed project narrative, including sections related to themes of artistic excellence, project concept, project design and planning, and audience and community impact. The next task is a project budget. All applicants must submit their budget using the Hewlett 50 Arts Commission's budget form. This form is a downloadable Microsoft Excel file and meant to reduce the burden of copying and pasting individual numbers into the online form. To ensure that panelists can easily read your budget, we ask that both the project income and the project expense sheets are exported as PDFs and then uploaded separately to the online form. Next, we'll ask for an artist work sample. Our preference is for non-edited videos that communicate the lead artist's technical mastery and distinctive niche. Ideally, this work sample will give greater context and understanding to the artist's style, format, artistic lineage, and inspirations that are described in the application narrative. A second sample is optional and can give a greater sense of the artist's work or focus on the presenting capacity of the lead applicant, but it's not necessary to have 2 samples. The artist's work sample must be submitted as a hyperlink to an online video sharing site, such as YouTube or Vimeo, with a combined total viewing length of no more than 5 minutes. So if you're doing 1 sample, 5 minutes. If you're doing 2 samples, still 5 minutes total. Lastly, we ask for organization information like your IRS 501c3 determination letter, organizational bylaws, and financial information. This financial information can be one of the following options: a Data Arts Hewlett Foundation funder report, or a balance sheet and profit and loss statement, or a 2018 audit from the lead applicant. Instructions about how to fill out the online application form are available both in the guidelines and embedded throughout the online application. For additional assistance, applicants can review the online FAQ, use the SurveyMonkey Apply application help feature, which is a small little eye icon that you see in the green bar above there, or you can email 50chelp@hewlett.org, and I'll respond to that as quickly as I can. Additionally, Jaime and I will also be offering individual support sessions of about 20 minutes. Those are coming up in mid-October, and I'll send a link out to everyone, both that attended the workshop, so make sure we got your email, and for those folks that are watching on Facebook Live, we'll post that link as well. And now we're going to go over to selection criteria, and I'll hand it back over to Jaime Cortez.
Okay. When we convene our panel of experts in dance and movement-based performance, these are the criteria that they will be using to evaluate your application and its competitiveness within the cohort of applications. The first thing that we're looking at is your project concept. The most competitive projects are going to be advancing exciting, inspiring ideas. They're going to give a clear, strong articulation of the key themes and how the lead artist will use their skills to realize these themes and to address them. The theme can be a burning, urgent issue of the day ripped from the headlines. Some of them have been awarded, or it can be something more timeless. Both of them are acceptable. The proposal should show a depth of thought, a freshness of approach, and a potential for the work to have lasting value as a work of art. The other thing we're looking at as artistic excellence. This will be the most heavily weighted of all the criteria. And the competitive applications and the narratives will show, and the work samples will combine to demonstrate the artist's technical mastery, to explain their training, to help us understand this artist standing in the field of dance or movement-based performance, to understand their unique artistic voice and contributions. I think very critically as well, the strongest proposals are going to demonstrate how this lead artist track record is making them ready to take a leadership role in a big, ambitious project. We're also going to be looking at project design and planning. The most competitive applications will show a thoughtful process for realizing the project. We're going to be looking for doable timelines. We're going to be looking for strong partnerships. We're going to be looking for good strategic collaborations. We're going to be looking for clear leadership roles and responsibilities. We're going to be looking for a good plan for reaching audiences. All of these are some of the indicators of what we'll be looking for in project design and planning. And here's another key thing to just, if I could drive this one home, this one I think is very significant, is that what we're looking for as well is a combination of ambitious stretch and project viability. So we like seeing an applicant pushing themselves beyond what they normally do, something that's maybe a little beyond their current reach. But that needs to be balanced out with indicators that you have the capacity to pull off this ambitious project that you want to take on. So that's the balance, you guys. We want to see that ambition, that vision, and we want to see your viability and your ability to plan your way through this. We're also going to be looking at audience and community impact. We want to see a thoughtful articulation of you understanding who the audience is, how you're going to reach them, what are going to be the marketing and outreach efforts and channels that you'll be using, and what ways, if any, the project is going to engage community members in something more than just being audience members. Are they going to be workshops? Are they going to be talkbacks? Are they going to be performing opportunities? How will you be engaging community? I want to be clear that we do not require community engagement. So if you don't want to do community engagement, or if that's not the right fit for your project, that's fine. But if you are going to have community engagement, please tell us the story of what that community engagement is. Why are you doing it? Why is the artist qualified to do this kind of engagement work? Final thing we'll be looking at, The final piece is the financial capacity. The most competitive applications will make a case for how this lead applicant has the capacity to execute this project without causing great financial strain or damage to the organization. We want budgets that are clear with good budget notes. We want viable income goals. And so that's part of how we'll be looking at your the financial capacity. Those are the criteria that we'll be using. I want to go ahead now and just kind of recap. At this point, we have covered the Hewlett Foundation's long-term commitment to the arts. We have given you an overview of the 50 Commission's awards and the eligibility requirements. We've covered some of the application process and the selection criteria. Now we want to go ahead and turn this over to your questions. And I'll ask my colleagues, Emiko and Kevin, to come up on stage here, and we'll just take your questions.
Oh, goodness. There we go.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for doing this presentation today. I represent what you could call a collective of artists, that there are many different artistic voices within the organization. And I'm just wondering if one of the voices of an organization are tapped to be a lead artist, does that cancel out the other voices within such an organization? I'm not sure if that's clear, but I'm just worried about eligibility, and this is a great opportunity, and I know a lot of people want to go out for it.
Do you want to take that one?
Sure.
Can you also restate the question too, just for folks?
Sure. So the question was about this. We require that the application name a lead artist. And the question was basically about what happens if it's an organization that really functions as a collective with many artistic voices in the mix. And more particularly is, if they have a lead artist, does that negate the voices of the other artists in the collective? And the answer is no, it does not. We need you to have a lead artist, and we need that person's voice to be coming through in the creative process strongly, but that doesn't cancel out everybody else.
And I suppose, let's say another lead applicant wanted to tap one of the artistic voices in the organization, while the organization wanted to push forward its own.
Okay, so an artist may be a lead artist on one application and a collaborating artist on another in this cycle. So their name can appear twice, but not as a lead artist 2 times. You can be a lead artist once and a collaborating artist once.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Amanda from Bandaloop. Thank you. That was really succinctly and clearly laid out. And I found myself feeling slightly intimidated by the criteria, written this proposal before, and even so, I find it sort of daunting. So I just want to put that out there. And I'm wondering, over a 3-year period, if there's capacity within the budgeting structure to account for some of our indirect costs, significant outlay of staff time, even just for the planning of the proposal, the number of hours that it takes us to plan and to pin down project parameters and stuff like that is not insignificant. So I'm just wondering how we would represent those indirect costs in the budget.
Yeah. Take that one.
Yeah. So you can and you ought to account for your not so indirect real costs that go into creating a proposal and a project of this magnitude. There is a requirement that $50,000 of the $150,000 award is dedicated solely to the lead artist. And in addition, another $50,000 goes to the creation of the work. But the remaining $50,000 is really yours to tell us how you will use that in support of the project, and there's quite a lot of flexibility in that. So you'll see when you get into the budget portion of it that there are many ways that you can account for that. And of course, even in the $50,000 that's dedicated to the creation piece, creation is artist time, staff time. There's a lot that goes into that creation piece. So you have even more than the more than $50,000 to work with there.
Additionally, too, in the budget form, there's a specific line item for administrative overhead because we anticipate that the organization will need those funds to see this commission all the way through.
Hi, I have a question about the eligibility around students and the difference between, say, students and youth, and if it's come up either in the past 2 rounds about what that threshold is with an artist working with, and I would probably use the term youth more than students, but maybe there's a distinction that I'm not understanding.
Mm-hmm. So it's a good question. If someone is enrolled as a student, regardless of what age they are or what their experience level is, they would not be eligible as a lead artist.
But they could certainly perform or be a part of a production. If it is a project that is about, well, let me try to nuance this. So Destiny Arts Center received Mark
Bamuthi.
Mark Bamuthi is the lead artist, and he's working closely with the young people who study and are a part of Destiny Arts Center. So you have a lead, professional artist in the primary role there, but it's being performed and deeply informed by the voices of youth as part of the artistic process. So that gives you a sense of how youth can be involved in a project like that. What we're looking to avoid is students applying as lead artists or students being used entirely for the I would just say I would stop there, that the students being used in the lead artist role.
Okay, great.
And that, I just want to dig into that a little bit more. That exclusion of students, it's an imperfect tool for us in a lot of ways, because we understand that there are some people who, for instance, are in master's programs who have amazing track records and careers already. But we had to, just out of concern for what Emiko was talking about, we need to have, we decided that we had to draw that line this year. So, yeah.
I have 2 questions, and I think one is pretty basic. How many people applied for each of the last 2 rounds?
Good question. In music composition, that was our first year. It was 105-ish.
120, wasn't it?
120, somewhere between 105 and 120. And in our second round, which was musical theater, and spoken word, 60 or 65, somewhere between 60 and 65. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
So, and we've been trying to read the tea leaves, and we have no idea what to expect in this round. We do know that the theater projects were, in general, more complicated to put together than the music composition projects. That's probably why we saw literally just about half as many applicants. They were just more of a beast to pull together than the music composition projects. I don't know how dance will land on that beastliness spectrum.
And then you said you would be offering 20-minute individual support sessions. Are those solely like technical FAQ kind of things, or is that like in the application support, application review? Because I know Map Fund does their if you get it to us early, we can give you feedback kind of thing. And I don't know if those 20-minute sessions are more nuts and bolts or more kind of application support in a bigger way.
I think at any time, if application support is needed, you can always email directly and help you right there with the application support. And from my perspective, I think the technical assistance is if you're not quite sure on a question and you're looking for deeper guidance on it, or have maybe a couple of paths laid in front of you and are looking for input from Jaime or myself to help you out with that.
It's your time when we do those calls, so you get to prioritize what it is that you most want to discuss.
Thanks. I have a question. It might be complicated. I don't know. can the lead artist be doing a work that is a new site-specific version of a previously premiered work? And I can also just take this question offline if that makes sense.
You said a site-specific version of a previously performed work. That feels like a no to me.
I'm leaning no as well. It's really about new work. This is what this fund is for. Yeah. You may be able to nuance it in a way that could get you there, but if you want to definitely hit the target, yeah.
So something I'll add that we didn't kind of mention that might be useful to know as well. It's a little story about one of the applications last year that made it to the finalist round. It was a beautiful project, and the panelists were excited about it. But as they dug into the project further, and when they talked to the lead artist and the organization, they realized that this project was really far along, and that really a lot of the creation had already happened. And so the panelists said, you know what? We are not going to be paying for the creation of this piece. The creation's already mostly happened. So we need to, I just want to impress upon you that the piece can be at a super early stage or it can be partly done. But if it feels like it's already kind of cooked, it's not gonna fly. So just be mindful of what stage your project is at.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kim. I have 3 questions. One, if it's students from, let's say, I don't know, just grab a UC Berkeley, and can they be part of the performers?
You can include students as performers. We don't want the majority of the performers to be students.
Okay. The next question is, if the lead artist is going in and you know who they are, and then there's another choreographer or other choreographers would they just be down in the collaborating artists and still be working with the lead artist on the choreography?
I'm sorry, I lost track of the question.
So you have the lead artist. The way you guys are breaking it down, it's like you're sure you can have other collaborators, but it's really not clear because as many of us work in the field, we collaborate. So let's say you have the lead artist and there's other people that can do choreography or music, and so they would be also working in the choreography. Can they be listed as that in the application?
From my understanding, yes. We definitely want one very clear lead artist that is the lead artist that's making the artistic decisions on the project. Mm-hmm. But I think if you have collaborating artists that are even choreographers or people that are doing music, that's fine. I think you can have a creative team, however it is that you make work, and you would inform us of that. But we must very clearly have one lead artist name as lead artist that would receive that $50,000 commission for the work.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say that when you read the applications, it really comes through quite clearly how much there's a collective kind of process and collaborative process versus that singular artist who's way out in front. That comes through, and it's something you can describe in the narrative. You describe there's a question about the different roles that people will take. And you'll be able to communicate in the narrative how this group will work together and all the voices that'll go into the creative process. And that's definitely something that the panel is paying close attention to. They go into quite depth on the collaborating artists and looking at what they're bringing to the project as well. So it's not just about that lead artist's name. There's quite a lot of nuance. These are people who come from the field. They know these practices inside and out. So
that's my next question. Where does the panel come from? Are they international, national?
We'll say simply that they're national.
Okay.
National practitioners.
National practitioners. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. Going back to the work sample, or going back to the work and the creation, and Kevin Seaman, you spoke a little bit to the work sample, and I was just curious about what that work sample should look like, and especially if we're commissioning and applying pre any sort of getting into the studio or any sort of making, and does that work sample just go towards or show what the lead artist has done and kind of their artistic rigor? And
Exactly.
if you could expand to that.
Yeah, and I think too that what we're not looking for here is a sizzle reel to show us how good your video editing skills are. we want to see what the work would look like from the audience, and so showing up to 5 minutes of just exactly what that artist does on stage is going to be the most compelling thing. If there is a work in progress or something else that you would like to add, I would say maybe have that as your optional work sample and maybe spend less time there. It's really looking at what does a completed work looks like, so we really understand what that artist's perspective is and what makes them so special.
And then a follow-up on that, if the lead artist is the kind of main stakeholder or main creator for the organization, the lead applicant, and we're then going off of what Jaime is speaking about, this is a proposal for something brand new, something different that this artist has never done, then we're presenting work that they have done. I don't know if that's a catch-22 or...
Remember that the people reviewing this, the panelists, are going to be people with decades of experience in looking at performance, looking at dance. They will be able to look at that work sample, if it's a half-decent one, and assess some of that artist's capacity and make a determination about whether this leap feels viable given what they're seeing. So yes, if your project is really nascent, there's not going to be any work sample that shows it. We don't expect that at all. We want you to show us this person's capacity, their rigor. And I think I want to echo a little bit about what Kevin was saying about the nature of the video. We do not expect anyone to go to the expense and effort of creating a brand new video just for this application. But we would say that if your work sample is one that shows a lengthy period of time so that we can see how this choreographer, how this movement artist uses time and how they transition from one movement to the other, that's what's most helpful. That's what our panelists asked for. I asked them, what do you want in a work sample? They said, we don't like quick cuts. We don't like a bunch of edits. We like a single shot that shows us this artist, how they think about time and movement across time. So just some tips. And work samples always kind of, can be kind of tricky because to get a really good one is tough. It takes a lot of effort and in some cases a lot of expense. We understand that. And we will be instructing our panelists to not get too caught up in the production value of the videos, but rather to really look at the movement and the dance and assess that more than whether it's a beautifully made video. Obviously, a beautifully made video is wonderful to look at and it can really sway you, but we're going to ask them not to get overly fixated on production value.
Thank you. I'm sorry not to leave the work sample yet. I just am wondering, is there a year limit or within a certain amount of time that you would like to see the sample, like no more than 3 years old or something like that?
We had this question come up in another workshop, and there's not a specific year that we have within the guidelines, but if we're seeing a work sample that's 10 years old, it might not fit with the requirement that the artists have had created or co-created at least 2 works in the last 3 years. So there's not a specific requirement for that, but I would say also you would really need to make a case to tell us why we'd be seeing much, much older work rather than recent work.
So probably recent work is a plus, and older work is not necessarily a minus, but it can raise eyebrows from the panelists who wonder, why isn't there something more recent here?
And what would you describe to be recent? Is 3 years?
I think, yeah, it's something in that 3, even 5 year span, I think feels recent to me. So, yeah.
Hi, Stella here from Dance Mission. I have a question about the lasting impact of the work. I I feel like maybe I remember from the music composition there was an encouragement of really wanting the work to then maybe tour. Is that the case of what you're referring to as lasting impact, like work that has potential to then travel the world?
I find that this is one of the more slippery parts of the application in a lot of ways. What that exactly means, our panelists are going to be the ones who are going to have to make that determination, and we are going to be really relying on their decades of experience of having seen dance and movement-based work come around the bend, and to see what has had lasting value. So in some ways, we are punting to them on that question. I lost track of your question. Sorry.
Oh, I can, but we don't have a question that says, well, we actually do. We do have a question that says, if you have co-commissioners or tour plans, tell us about them. They're not required. So it won't give you a leg up to describe those things. But if you do have those plans, they're helpful to know. It can help us understand the scale of the project, how long the project has been in incubation, sort of, what is the lifetime that you expect. But some of the most amazing works that we all know have come out of nowhere and have lived for decades, and so these are very unpredictable things to ask a question about and get an answer that's going to get us there.
I think that's a good response. It's not a necessary thing. I don't know that it's even a big advantage, but there's occasionally where it's an integral part of the relationship. For instance, if there's a co-production happening, then to know that, it's going to be showing at X theater outside of this region.
After the Bay Area premiere.
After the world premiere here.
My name's Nadi. I'm from Nova Dance Theater. I had a couple of questions. One, since the project is over the course of 3 years, how are the funds paid out? Since we have so many collaborators who are maybe relying on the funds, are they quarterly, biannually?
Upon awarding, you get the entire check at the beginning.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for that.
So you get to manage it.
Oh, that's exciting and daunting. Okay. And then you had mentioned briefly the fiscal sponsor situation. I just want, because I'm an artist who has a fiscal sponsor, but then I have an applicant organization that I'm working with that's separate. I mean, I didn't know that. Could the fiscal sponsor be your lead applicant, or how? I'm a little confused.
I'm happy to talk through that.
Yeah.
So artists that are working with a fiscal sponsor would not be eligible to apply. What we're really looking for is for an organization to be the lead applicant. If that organization has a fiscal sponsor, the fiscal sponsor will act as a lead applicant.
Got it.
And so the fiscal sponsor, the fiscally sponsored project can still be involved in it, but they just have to make sure to meet the eligibility requirements of budget, geography, et cetera.
Got it. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Something also quick to just note is if you are a project and your annual budget is less than $100,000, you cannot apply with a fiscal sponsor. However, there is still an opportunity if you partner with a nonprofit who is within the budget range, and they can be the lead applicant. So there can be multiple organizations involved in the project, and we expect that that's probably going to be the norm in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Erica from Chinatown CDC. I had two questions. One is, what if the lead artist is kind of a multidisciplinary practitioner who does performance as well as visual arts? Would that be a knock because he's not only, a choreographer in this particular category?
I think from my perspective, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but we wouldn't be looking at the visual component. We wouldn't be looking at the writing component. So you'd really need to make sure that that artist's movement or dance work can stand on its own as choreography, as movement-based performance.
Yeah. Remember that you'll be in a pool with very advanced practitioners in dance and movement-based performance. So They need to really be bringing it and that can take a couple of different forms. It might be that just the concept is such that it really resonates with the panelists, that you have this multidisciplinary artist who also does movement. That might go over just fine, but it has to be just right, like in that case, because it's not primarily a dancer, choreographer, or a movement-based performance person. Does that make sense, Erica?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
And then my second question is for performance venue. So I work in Chinatown. We would love to have a performing arts venue in the community. We're working on it. So those production costs, may vary because we're still like trying to find out which, venue, may be able to, hold something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay that those in the budget, may change?
Yeah. And one of the things you can talk about is that if you do not have your venue nailed down yet, you can talk to us about venues that are under consideration. So you can let us know that as well.
Thinking about the example that Jaime used earlier, Policy Link is, they think they do have some space, but I don't think they have anywhere near what they would need for like the presentation of that type of work. So it's fine if you don't have that as long as that plan is clearly articulated, or if you give us an idea of how that plan will be completed.
So coming back to the Policy Link example, they were a really interesting presentation. They had some very interesting ideas because they organize national conferences, regional, all over the country, and they were going to have the choreo poem performed at these conferences. So you had a built-in audience of people who care about the subject matter of Americans in poverty. And the panelists really took to that idea. So they didn't have a set traditional theater setting for their piece, but they had a great built-in audience. It was going to have all this kind of national reach aside from the Bay Area premiere. And that kind of really went over well. So venue can take a bunch of different forms, and it's just how you pull together the package. Yeah.
I was waiting to see if anyone else wanted to speak. Last question I have is in regards to community impact. What are some examples of what either through music or through the last round of theater that company or people who were awarded grantees did in regards to their audience and community impact?
So, just a couple off the top of my head. I was talking to you earlier about Marcus Gardley's play that was going to be based on the Richmond shipyards and the women who worked there during World War II. Marcus was going to be taking a kind of anthropological approach where he was going to be interviewing women who actually worked in the shipyards during World War II to talk about their experiences. And they would become an integral part of their information gathering and writing process through their stories. And he would be checking in with them through the process to ask them, does this feel true to you? Does this feel right to you, given what you've experienced? So that's one example of a kind of engagement. It can be very intensive engagement. It can be a much lighter touch kind of engagement. Just depends on what is best for your project. In that case, it was totally integral. He would not want to do that project without those voices in the mix. So, does that help?
A very different kind of example is Del Sol. They received a grant in the music composition category based on the poetry that's engraved in the barracks on Angel Island. And they are working with a school that will be replicating the engravings and diving deeper into analyzing the poetry. And so it's a school-based project. I'm not even sure at this point if they're going to be necessarily going to Angel Island. I think they may.
It is.
So yes, they are going to Angel Island. So not an integral part of the creation of the piece, but really extends the impact of who is inspired by the same thing the artist is inspired to, and how can they gain depth of knowledge and make connections to that.
And I would again say, do not feel obligated to have an elaborate community engagement process in your project unless that's really what your artist and your organization feel is best for the project. Don't try to twist yourself into a pretzel to look like a certain kind of community engagement. Just do what's true to your project. Yeah.
Okay, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm just going to ask it anyway. So a presenter is interested in writing for us as the lead artist, but then we're also interested in writing to commission another lead artist. So in one application, Bandaloop would be the lead artist, and in a separate application, we would be the organization commissioning another artist.
Ooh.
Can we
Whoa,
do that?
That's a first time ever question, I think.
I got confused. Can you say it again?
Okay, so somebody's interested in us being the lead artist in their application,
The
like a
artistic
presenter.
director, right?
Right.
Yep.
So they would essentially commission Bandaloop to build a site-specific piece in their space. And then we, in turn, are interested in writing a proposal where we would bring in a choreographer, and we would be the organization presenting, and the choreographer would be the lead artist, not us. But our dancers would perform, but the choreographer would bring their own work on our company.
That sounds like a no to me.
Okay, I think it sounds like a yes. We may need to caucus.
Okay, I thought it was part of
and
it.
get back to you. But here's the question. I think if both awards were to be made, the real question is really like capacity, because I will tell you the capacity, these projects are huge. They are huge, and they take a lot from an organization, and they even take more than you're thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'll tell you that we've changed the financial capacity. We've nuanced the language about that particular selection criteria because we know that the commission will really eat into the organization's capacity to do other things. Mm-hmm. And so that would be the real question that would be on the table, to have two proposals. And if they were to both make it to the finalist stage, I think we would be in conversation about that. But I think we should also loop back to you, Amanda, and make sure that works. And
I think that the question that Emiko just raised about capacity, our panelists are going to be all over that question and really asking, I think, hard questions about that. So
the other thing that I think could happen with that type of application is if the artistic director is the person that's being commissioned by another presenter, does that mean that they wouldn't have a role within the piece that you're creating? Or would they be doing now double duty on top of their everyday duties of running an organization?
Any other questions? All right. We will close it here, although we will stay if any of you have particular questions that you'd like to ask of us. There's also 50chelp at hewlett.org, where Kevin will be sitting, waiting for your questions, never sleeping between now and November.
Ever. All night. Also, too, I'll follow up with make sure that we've got your email before you go. If you register online, we already have it. So I can follow up to send you the paper application that we have, which is essentially a Word document of all of the questions in the application already put offline into that Word document to make it easier for you, as well as the budget template, links to guidelines, link to the online application. We're just going to send you everything we got, so it's all in one place.
So, and also just in closing, everybody, thank you so much for coming out today. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. It keeps us sharper to kind of keep, hearing these different iterations of how you might put your projects together. I just want to close out with a couple of thoughts. Amanda had talked about there's a kind of an intimidation factor going on. And, it's understandable. These are, sizable commissions, and you'll be in a pool of applicants with your esteemed colleagues and some of the best and brightest kind of dance and movement people in the region. So, in all those ways, it's daunting. And the application, we're asking for a lot from you. We want you to bring your best. And so that's totally understandable. I hope that doesn't dissuade you, because you just don't know what's going to catch fire with with our panelists. And last year, a couple of them, I was so happy to see them get really excited about quirky projects from little organizations that had never gotten anything at all on this scale, but they got through. A couple of them did, and that was really thrilling to me, because the idea was there and it really caught fire. And I think the organizations were kind of stunned to actually win. And we were really happy that that happened. $150,000 is not a fortune, but it's also not chump change. So just dream and just think about the most beautiful, powerful thing you could imagine with such a commission, and bring it. We're looking forward to it.
I want to also thank all the folks that were joining us on the Facebook Live feed, Commonwealth Club, and all of our tech staff for thanking us, and our ASL interpreters that joined us as well today.
Thank you.